Excellent. So we've got a bit of extra time on this panel, and we're going to be talking about the tech tools, the ad tech and martech tech tools that the modern marketer needs to have as part of their tech stack to plan and to execute advertising campaigns. We're looking at everything from CRM to CMS to more acronyms to data management, AI, all the tech tools that we might need to consider to as a modern marketer. We have an esteemed panel, and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves going down the line. And can you please give me your name, your company, and then what your perspective is on this topic around helping modern marketers with their ad tech stack?
Thank you, Joe. Look, I don't think I've been called esteemed before, but I'll take it. It's a lovely thing to hear, and I might have to get that in email. Look, I'm Josif Zanich. I run Nexxen. For those who aren't familiar with Nexxen, it's actually a relatively new brand. We are a combination of Unruly, who you may be familiar with, and Amobi, coming together about 12 months ago. So wonderful to be here. What was the second question? That was
Well, just what your perspective is. So that's great. You've explained Amobi and then Nexxen. So how do you work with modern marketers on their tech stack?
We're actually just, I guess, a small component, and I'm actually looking forward to this panel myself because we've got, I think the esteemed is on my left-hand side, so we make up a small component of that. But I guess our endeavour is to make sure we're touching as many parts as possible. So.
Great. Ganga.
My name is Ganga. I'm a Senior Director, Product Technology, APAC for dentsu. I think this topic is obviously very close to heart in terms of the work that we do and I do. And probably the most important part, hopefully it comes through, is that the entire customer journey today is very non-linear, and therefore more of the innovation that's coming through, hopefully with customer lifetime value as a key element, will benefit the ecosystem in general.
Hello, my name is Reevi. I'm the head of data and analytics at Digitas. So, this whole conversation on the marketing stack and the ad stack, when you're from a data perspective, you kind of get the view across all the different channels. And we see more and more that clients are actually looking at, planning from a segment perspective and not just planning from a channel perspective. So I think this conversation is really important and much needed to have if, you've not already started on it.
So my name is Shivani. I work for Mastercard. I manage marketing and comms for the emerging markets at Mastercard. I think this is an extremely exciting discussion because this is absolutely current, absolutely relevant, and a lot of my peers in the industry are also talking about exactly this situation. It does tend to get quite tech-heavy at times when we have these conversations, but I think it's really important to bring it down to basics to really see how all of the tech that comes together, all the convergence that happens, lands in proper business value for the clients. So I think this is extremely current, so really excited to be here.
That's a great perspective, so thank you for that. And for the benefit of everybody, I'm Joanna Burton. I'm an old digital marketing person. I've done marketing, ad tech, publishing, brands and agencies. I was a marketer, but an old marketer, not a modern marketer. So I can bring that perspective to this discussion. So let's dive into it. I'm going to start with the agencies. So can you tell me from your perspective, are you seeing more conversations with brands talking from a holistic level about their tech stack, the different elements that they have in the stack and their approach? Ganga, let's start with you.
Certainly. I think what's happened probably in the last maybe 5 to 8 years is one, discovery of the technology that they have today, the brands have today, and additional technology that they're interested in, purely from the perspective of knowing their customer better. And I think the other part to that I should add is probably also figuring out how good is their media side working, and that also has a lot of technology coming in, usually from the ad tech side of it. But there's more focus now coming through on the MarTech technology stack also. So it's both discovery and new elements.
So would you say that the pace of changing ad tech is driving more of an integrated approach?
Yeah, I think so. And like I said earlier, because the customer journey itself is very non-linear, how we make our purchases, how we actually experience everything around us is very non-linear. what happens is you look at your technology stack and you probably have to start getting more agnostic about these acronyms and names and looking at how you can actually implement for the right customer journey that you would have.
Okay, and what's your perspective, Reevi? Are you having these integrated conversations, holistic conversations?
Yes, and I think it's also, to add to what Ganga said, it's kind of also driven by a lot of the customer expectations. And some of the in the earlier panel discussion about personalization, they talked about your neighbor knocking versus your friend knocking. I mean, that aspect is there, but still, customers are getting used to the whole idea of personalization across journey and in terms of their profile. So that needs to kind of flow from each channel to another, and the marketing stack is very important. I think also many marketers are coming, are understanding that they're not completely utilizing their stack. Yeah. It's only kind of utilized to about 20% of the possibility. And then I think also in terms of channels, there are new, like messaging is becoming a channel which kind of combines media and CRM together in a way. And that in itself will drive this whole discussion of combining and orchestration in marketing.
So it's very much about the tools combining at the point of the use case from the marketer. But 20% seems really low.
It is low because I think the way organizations operate right now, much of the marketing department is kind of siloed. The traditional sense, it was siloed. So you have acquisition on one side and you have like a retention section. So CRM and media usually operate to hit a certain KPI, but they don't typically talk to each other. And if the marketing stack is utilized in a much more better way, I think you will see that 20% go up much more higher.
So at the moment it's in silos. We've heard a lot about that today. We've heard about different teams inside organizations not sharing information. We've heard about the brand team not wanting to share data with the performance team. So that's definitely your experience. I guess Pareto's law, 20% might deliver 80% of the results, but let's get into that discussion as we go through the panel. What about you, Jay-Z? What's your perspective on this holistic approach to a marketer's tech stack? Is that something you see?
I definitely won't give an articulate answer like I've just heard, so it was fantastic. But I think from our perspective, and it's very small, we're finding that we're working with companies we typically wouldn't have worked with. And I think that's as we're starting to see the technology stacks come together. Things like call tracking is now coming back through our DMP, then pushing out messaging. If you've called a customer service representative trying to buy a handset, for example, and then that will get messaged to us, and we'll put some messaging around offers if we can't convert them. So yeah, it's definitely changed our world. And yeah, we're finding new and wonderful ways to work with the entire stack.
And are you talking directly to the modern marketer or to the agencies or both?
Good question, actually. It's probably both. And I think we typically do it hand in hand with the agency. But a lot of the times we're brought in to, I guess, be a partner. And I know we're talking a little bit about that a bit further on the agenda, but we're there in the room, which is really nice. I think there comes a level of trust that we've had to build up to be there, but we certainly are.
Okay, great. Well, then let's talk to the marketer that we have on the panel. Shiv, as a marketer, do you have full visibility into the tech stack that you have and the tech that's deployed in your organization?
So Mastercard is a massive organization across the world. So it's, I guess it's difficult to say we have full visibility into all the tech stacks that the different business functions use. But when it comes to marketing, the MarTech, AdTech, all the marketing stacks, yes, we do have full visibility.
So all the marketing, but not necessarily the advertising. Yeah. And is that per region, or do you have a sense of what's happening in other regions too?
I would say it would be similar. So where there needs to be convergence, we will have some sharing and talk to the product leads and do a bit of synergizing around that. But usually we have a lot of different tech functions across different business units. So Snigdha was in the panel earlier, and she also talked about how AI is driving safety and security, for example. So these lots of different tech stacks, but I think understanding the MarTech stack is really important, because that's going to drive value for the marketing function. So I would say confidently across the world, my different regional counterparts, we do have good visibility around our marketing stacks, whether it's run by global or whether it's regionalized.
Yeah, so you're a modern marketer, so that's great to hear. So how would you say advice for the other marketers in the room that they should approach this issue from an internal perspective? How can they look to emulate your position where you have a good understanding of the different tech stacks and different partners that you work with here and in different regions?
So I wouldn't say that it was like this from the start, right? Because like my esteemed colleagues have said, in terms of having different functions within marketing, it can be quite siloed. This is no different from an agency as well, right? We will have the PR team, we will have analytics, we would have the content team, we have B2C, we have B2B, so very, very siloed. Now, I think it's really important to drive education and awareness around how this marketing stack is going to help them drive their individual goals and their business outcomes, right? So we had to go on our journey of our own from a digital transformation perspective to really make this more pervasive within the marketing function. It didn't start like this. It's a journey that you have to go through, but it's absolutely critical because every function within marketing benefits from understanding how to utilize the tech, how to optimize it, and how to make the most of it. So we've had really interesting discussions, with that opened up as a result of these sharing sessions that basically helped us to optimize our CMS, optimize what ad tech we choose. Media quality was really important when we talked to the analytics team. So I think it really is about step by step. You have to do the education, but most importantly, when we talk about limitations, it can be around a lack of interest. It can be also around getting a bit fearful about too much technology and jargon, as we say. But I think once you bring it down to the business goal and connect it to what they want to achieve, then the entire conversation becomes more palatable. Yeah.
So in that respect, it's very much cultural. It's about a lack of interest. That's quite an honest answer. But also maybe it's too technical. It's not specifically because the different tech areas don't work, because the vision is different, or because don't work together, I mean the different tech doesn't work together, or because of regulations or anything external. It's very much an internal approach that you can take there.
I think for Mastercard, yes, it would be. I think different organizations would have different challenges in this regard. So for us, we are a tech company, so we're quite familiar with the need for technology, right? So there is a certain amount of openness, but like I said before, sometimes certain functions need to really understand how this impacts the business, and then they start to really contribute, right? It's a natural progression of bringing teams together.
Yeah, and I thought it was really interesting to hear from Annie this morning at Income about the data training for thousands of employees. Is that something similar that you, or is it just already ingrained?
The data part of it?
The approach to training as many people
Absolutely, absolutely. So we do have knowledge sharing sessions internally across business functions as well. So this is very much ingrained in the culture at Mastercard. So it's something that also then translates to how we do it in marketing.
Excellent. So then let's ask the agencies. How can the agencies help work with the marketers, the modern marketers, to address this, to advise on the whole of the tech stack? What's the best approach? Ganga, you had some thoughts about this, looking at the silos that could be connected.
Yeah. I think I'll break it down in maybe 2 or 3 ways, at least how dentsu approaches this with the customers that we have. One is deconstructing the technology and the unnecessary complication that the technology jargon offers. That's very important. In fact, our industry in general, and this is probably my 8th or 10th year in ATS, we do a phenomenal job at bringing barriers with jargon. And that's a great way of actually not allowing entry to anybody else to walk into that space. That includes actually your customers and clients sometimes. So I think the first thing is to deconstruct the technology, the jargon, what it does, and what purpose it suits. That's very important. The second part is basically working through what are the areas of innovation, because everything is about today too. A lot of innovation is happening today. So you can go in a discovery journey, but you'll be worried about what's happening today. So the second part to that is a very strong laser focus on what's happening today. If you have some new technologies that are coming through and that can break past some issues that were there a few years ago, clean rooms is one of the examples that was there in this topic, so bringing that up. So that focus is very important to say, hey, we've got some innovation, we can do some test and learn, and we can figure out the boundaries of the test and learn, so it's not something that you sort of throw somebody into straight up. And the third part to that is results. I think none of this actually works without a focus on measurement. So when you take sort of any of your customers through this journey, the focus always is on the measurement and the results part of it. And it's a pretty old adage, you can't measure it, you can't improve it.
Okay, great. What about you, Jay-Z? How do you see this? Are the agency partners best placed to advise the modern marketer? What's your role?
I might give a bit of a different answer actually to this one, because
Good.
I love what you said around people are scared, right? It's a scary topic, a lot of it, and myself included have kind of tuned out when you think, oh, this is too hard. But the journey of learning and taking people on that journey with you is so important. I think from our perspective, we often brought in to deliver messaging, and I think if it's not delivered by the company, sometimes you feel a bit more relaxed in that room. You can ask more questions, you're not being judged. So I think that's the role we play in that.
So explain that to me. It's not delivered by the company. You mean if it's not a solution you own, or if it's your solution but installed by somebody else?
Yeah, more so if and this is very general, but if you're the marketeer working for the company A, if you're in a session internally, you may be a bit more nervous to ask questions because you don't want your peers to know that you're not quite sure what's going on. But if a third party comes in like us and talks about it, it actually becomes more of a sharing session. And I think it takes down some of the barriers of, if I don't know this, then maybe people will judge me. So, yeah, that was, I like that because it feels true. And I was thinking this morning actually, as I was getting ready, how to answer this question. I thought, I've used life examples as typically there's somebody in the organisation who's very quiet and very switched on, that has lots of information that you can sit with and spend time with. And they often bring these people through that may be slightly, older is not the right word, but they've been around for a long time and are struggling to change their ways. Because you break down that barrier of, I should know this because I've been here for longer.
So then for you, it's much more cultural. It's not about the limits of the tech.
Correct.
Reevi, what do you think? Are agencies best placed to drive this, to link the silos on behalf of a modern marketer? Or is it limited by, if you own the tech as an agency, does that create any conflict there? Or are you happy to recommend tech you don't own?
Yeah, well, at Digitas being part of Publicis, so we do kind of operate at this Publicis One approach. So even though we are a network of agencies, we do have like a transformation team similar to what you would see, on the client side, where we kind of come together and do the assessment in terms of what is needed, and then we kind of pull together the right people from multiple different agencies. So you kind of have a great mix of the people who have a full view of where you need to kind of go, but also in terms of the right specialists in the room if and when it is needed. Now, we do have our own tech with Epsilon and a few other platforms in place. But finally, we need to kind of look at, from an agency perspective, when we go to a client, it could be in two ways. One is to provide a service or during a review of the overall tech. So when we provide the service, we kind of go to them and look at the existing tech that is in place, and we try to maximize what they have, because there's still a lot of untapped value over there. When it comes to a tech review, that's a much more longer drawn process. And at that point of time, yes, we do bring in Epsilon, which is like an excellent platform, but if and when the need is there, we bring it in. Yeah.
And do you find that you're having different conversations with different people as you map onto them on the marketing side of the organization? You might have a different conversation with a transformation team than a marketing team or an ad delivery team. How do you manage that?
Well, what we usually see is that for projects which are very market-driven, the conversation might not be with the transformation team. So we are open to kind of having those conversations. We all started from a specific channel and kind of expanded into other channels. But more and more, the conversations we are having are with regional teams where that discussion is happening on how to kind of link everything together. And data being the main thing which kind of fuels all of this, because you can link up the tech, but if you don't have the right data in place, it's not going to work. So we do have both of those conversations. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about data for a bit. So you say yourself that you think that many marketers are only using about 20% of the tech they have. What about the approach to customer data? We heard today that Accenture says that customers, only 28% of customers say they have a strategy for the data. So what approaches do you see around, or best practice approaches around collecting, harnessing, deploying customer data?
I think the approaches to collection of data have to go down to basics. So we do talk about, there's a lot of discussion about AI and, the other platforms which can be there. But without having the right data in place, none of that is going to kind of be driven. And what we're seeing is that a lot of clients are basically collecting customer data, but the quality of the data which is being collected is not at par. And also the type of data which can be derived from the data that is existing. So say behavioral variables. Most of the time, the way the data is structured is basically what people have actually talked about themselves. And they don't go into more of derived variables. So there needs to be a proper structure in place where that data can be properly transformed, and the focus should be more on quality of data capture. So these are very basic things, which is that when you collect data, it needs to be in the right form. It needs to be, the right variables need to be captured. And if that's not done, then those systems or those programs need to be kind of optimized. And from there, you get into, you can have the best CDP in place, but if you have like very low quality data coming in, it's not going to help.
And I guess the same for everything, for all the tools that might be used. If the data, we've had a couple of panels this morning about the data, so if that data isn't collected, laid down properly as a bedrock for the organization, then it doesn't really matter what tools you have on top. And what about your approach, Ganga? What are you seeing in terms of data collection and then the tools that are being applied on top?
Yeah, I think there's also a distinction, and I agree with Reevi completely in terms of the collection method, but there's also a distinction between the various brands and who actually can do data collection, and some where the data collection may not be even sort of overt. It's not through the assets that they have, or there's no particular page to go to and actually collect data. So from a data strategy perspective, those differences are very important because it makes for you to think about how else to actually support them when you talk about data. The collection part, I absolutely agree. There is a certain element towards getting data collection done in a certain way, and they're fairly set templates right now in terms of how you actually start your data journey in terms of collection, etc. But what happens past that is where the biggest sort of devil is in the detail in terms of, I think we've heard discussions around match rates, around the fact that sometimes the quality is not good enough for to do other things that you want to, and so on and so forth. But I'd say starting on the journey is very important, whether you collect it through your standard assets or you have other data to look at and to talk about. But that journey begins and it leads into everything else we've heard. The transformation, the sort of the training that happens internally, the understanding that needs to happen, the fear that has to go away, et cetera, et cetera. So.
Okay, because what impact does it have? I think, you shared with me before that you think clients are leaping to AI or the latest new thing rather than focus on the basics.
I think we see that a lot more actually in our region because we tend to do good things with doing the leapfrog. If you cannot put in the undersea cables or underland cables for broadband, you leap straight to Wi-Fi. And that has benefits without a doubt. But I think taking the same approach towards things like AI by saying, let's do AI, but I don't know anything about my data, is definitely sort of not going to work in the future. So some of those instincts to sort of jump straight into areas which actually probably won't give the benefit need a little bit more education in terms of how to take the step-by-step approach, yeah.
So just talking about the actual tools, the advertising and the marketing tools that are needed, would you include AI tools?
I think the approach that we're taking in general is to look at artificial intelligence from being subsumed across every touch point that you have. It is not something that you bring in separately, attach, detach, but it's more about looking at various points that you can actually bring in the, I would say, elements of data science. Let's talk it from that angle as opposed to keep talking about AI. In general, if you can do fairly good, well-driven statistics, you're already at a good place. If you're doing slightly better with some modeling, you can do slightly better with your data science tools. But the point is to see how you can subsume it across various touch points and journeys that you have.
Great. So let's talk about data science tools instead. And then the other tools that you think would be essential to being part of the tech stack. So there'll be AI or data science tools. You talked about data clean rooms.
Yeah, I think that's coming up really new. I know it's very new and fresh for everybody in terms of looking at it. We have already started working in that space and across the standard use cases. And if I guess I can split it into two ways. If you are more on the application side of clean rooms and want to understand that, there's a lot of space there to understand what it is for. If you're more on the technical side of it to understand, what is it used for, I think a good place to start is looking at the IAB sort of tech labs documentation. The use cases are very clearly laid out as to what you can do with them. And there are, of course, the partners, vendors, et cetera, that you can work with. So there's a very clear pathway towards walking into the clean rooms, and we're already seeing some traction on that.
So any other tools, data science tools, clean rooms, any other specific tools, a set of tools that a modern marketer needs, in your opinion?
Yeah, and I think some of these will come across as things that we all know. I mean, CMS systems, CRM, et cetera. Especially when it comes to content management and CRM, these two areas I think are important. First, actually knowing what these will do for you. Then, of course, coming across with what tool will actually solve the problem for you. But I would say there are these 2 or 3 tool sets that will help, and none of these things actually work in silos anyway. So, and that, of course, pretty much everybody who's operating with them knows. But working with them and figuring out which programs work best in terms of bringing 2 or 3 tools together, and the test and learn approach is very important. I think it shouldn't be, I'll change the world on day one. Won't happen.
Okay, and what about from your perspective, Reevi, if you're looking at the different tools that are needed? So are you seeing an increased demand for AI tools, or shall we say data science tools, and also for clean rooms and new emerging tech? Does that help get marketers more excited about and interested in learning about the technology, or is it overwhelming?
I think there are certain tools which are like very basic and which kind of have to be there. So in terms of analysis, you do need some layer of data analysis tools which are kind of required. So similar to that, say CMS and website analytics, those are the bedrock tools which need to be there. But depending upon where the client is at, whether it is the focus is on websites or whether the focus is on apps, and also in terms of are they more brand awareness focused or say e-commerce focused, that all decides what would be the right type of tools which have to be there in place. If you look back like 4 or 5 years, we didn't have so many tools. Now, like you said, like there are too many abbreviations, but it needs to be kind of tailored to the specific client. And what's interesting in the market is also that we are seeing a lot of platforms which are, the typical CDP was supposed to be a unifying platform. But right now, you also see things like server-to-server, API, integration layers being added to that. Some aspect of CMP also kind of being added to that. So it'll be interesting to kind of look at platforms. What we would advise, clients is that look at platforms which kind of hold multiple pillars or provide multiple solutions. Because the other side of it is that if you buy too many of these tools, they have to be maintained, they have to be serviced. And that's going to be quite a lot to kind of do if there are too many of them in place.
And CMP, you mean consent management platform?
Yes, that's right.
And that's been linked to the CRM. And have you seen a move from a DMP to a CDP?
Not from a DMP to CDP, but some of the CDP providers do also provide CMP right now. So if there's a move towards that. So if that's better instead of having a separate platform in place. But I think these things are kind of developing right now. Like even in terms of clean rooms, you have clean rooms, then the discussions about collaboration platforms in place. The market is evolving a lot in terms, or the solutions are evolving a lot in terms of what is possible. So there's going to be a time where we kind of see some of this come together, and where you have a single, not a single platform, but a few primary platforms in place.
So do you expect interoperability or acquisition and consolidation in the space?
Yeah, it's more of the, it might be too much to kind of talk into the future, but I think it would be more from an acquisition perspective that this happens. Otherwise, it's very tough to kind of service some of these platforms.
Okay, so then it'll become easier to deploy them. There'll be more utilization of the existing tech, but just fewer choices. Or will something new come along, the next AI?
No, there'll always be something new which comes along. And I think it's a process. We've already gone through this process in multiple different ways. If you look at Salesforce, they did grow a lot of their stack in terms of acquisition. You will see cycles of this happening.
And what about you, Jay-Z? What sort of tools do you think are needed in the modern marketer's tech stack? Have we forgotten anything? We've got data science.
It's a good question, actually. And this one, everything everyone said is obviously correct. I think one of the things I got asked about 6 months ago was what keeps you awake at night, and just the usual stuff. But they said, "What about policies?" I said, "What do you mean by that?" And, well, government policies. And I think none of this considers law changes to data, right? And that's a scary place to be, because as a marketeer, if you're in charge of your customers' data, how you handle it and manage it and use it is really important, right? And none of us want to be in the room with the lawyers discussing that. So I think tools to navigate that are really important. Now, I don't know if there are tools. I'm sure there are per each region, but I think specifically for this region as well, there's so many different countries across and all working for global organisations. It does become something that keeps you awake at night. So how's that? That wasn't bad, was it?
But you're seeing a lot of coalescence around messaging with the tools that you're working with your clients. So keep the regulation, ensure that you have the right to communicate with the people in the channel, but you're seeing more kind of, are you using AI in that world of messaging as well?
Yeah, I think AI is an interesting term, because we've all used AI in our jobs for the past however long, right, within technology. But I think the way where AI is now, it's made it very famous, and it's a very, very broad term. But look, we have tools in place, lawyers in place, people in place to make sure that everything's kosher, because the space that we work within is rapidly changing. I think you wake up every morning and something different has happened. So
yeah, so that's a good point. It's changing very fast, isn't it? Reevi said that there's almost too much change. Ganga's highlighted that data clean rooms are an emerging area. There's obviously a lot of data, but it's not necessarily been used. You shared with me before, Reevi, that we even just need project management tools like Jira. We need something more fundamental to manage all these processes. We need to capture the data properly. It's clearly a very fast evolving market. So what are the key differences, and I'll ask each of you, what are the key differences that you've seen over the past couple of years, and projecting forward, how do you expect this to progress? And let's start with you, Reevi, because you had some good thoughts on this before.
Yeah, I think a few aspects that we haven't seen in media for a long time coming to play. One is lawyers are becoming very important, and like Jay-Z, you were saying, like a lot of the if we don't get the regulations and the usage of first-party data kind of ironed out much faster, things will just remain as a use case and not be actually deployed. That's why lawyers will become very important. Project management will is already very important, because if you're trying to link up between media, CRM, user experience, the number of stakeholders within that whole ecosystem are many. And to have a seamless experience, you do need a a proper project management office in place. So I do see these, other, parts of the organization kind of coming in and having a much more larger place to play. Yeah.
And Ganga?
I think we've seen probably around the past 15 years with a fair amount of infusion of technology of different shapes and sizes. I mean, I think anybody who's seen the Lumascape understands the the depth or the breadth that exists in this space, and it'll continue to happen without a doubt. We do see some consolidation, funnily enough, from the side of data science and AI, because a lot of it is now focused more on the data than on the tools itself that actually are facilitating it. So it's about finding out, do you have the right data sets to actually facilitate the data science part of it. So interesting consolidation from that angle, because the tool's less important. But I certainly agree with the idea that the legality of using the data and the regulation of how you use the data becomes important. But I think from a tools perspective, probably the biggest favor everybody can do themselves, I guess, is getting into more of the comprehension of what tools work best for the journey that they're on. You do not need 25 of them, but at the same time, one cannot do it. So that balance is something that needs to happen through a test and learn mechanism. I keep repeating on that, but that's the best way to go forward. But absolutely, there are many examples of things well done in terms of how these tools have been used.
What about you, Jay-Z? How do you expect this market to evolve?
I think all those answers were excellent. I probably can't add too much to it. I think, but based on what everyone's saying, we've got next, we'll see you all here this time next year for the same conversation, right? Because it is changing rapidly and will continue to.
Okay, so more lawyers, consolidation, big changes. In Asia, it seems to be leapfrogging other markets sometimes. I'm going to let our modern marketer have the final word on how what important changes, what evolutions have you seen, and how do you expect this to continue?
I think I'll bring it back to what Reevi was saying in terms of underutilization. So we don't think about that, but it's a fact, right? Maybe not 20%, maybe about 50-60%. So I think for me, if I circle back 5 to 10 years ago, agencies used to have conversations with us around the media plan and the ad tech, and this is what's going to drive the business. Fast forward to now, we're having a lot more interesting conversations with agencies and partners alike, where we see a solid conversion of all the tools coming together. So at Mastercard, we have CRM, CMS platforms. We're talking about how we harmonize the data within these platforms, feed it into AI generating creatives, whether it's for media distribution. We're talking about taxonomies when it comes to data analytics, what data science platforms you want to use. So all of that is coming full circle. And I think the most important aspect for a marketer is how all of this ad tech converges with the MarTech to really drive the business goals. And I see a lot of those conversations happening. And if I may, I think the best outcomes that we can get from a business perspective for a marketer is when we have these tripartite conversations where no one gets left out. I think the power of having the agencies and the vendors, the partners in the room together with us to strategize how you want to move forward, that's magic. And that's how we see it.
Okay, so that's great. So just to summarize, you're saying there are cultural barriers, but if you can bring the three parties together, that's very productive. You're saying that actually sometimes having these one-on-one conversations, it's actually good because people don't want to say in front of their boss what they don't know. So it's good to get the different perspectives on the panel. And your key points are that we need to converge around messaging. There's more and more tools in that, but there are increasing regulations to be aware of. And then I thought it was really interesting to hear from the panel about the rise of AI and machine learning and data science tools, project management tools, clean rooms. Clearly, there's a lot of tools to be considered, but as you said, Shivani, we need to just focus on what's actually going to deliver business results. So on that note, I'd really like you to join me in thanking our panel today.